Welcome back to CNN News 18. This is our continuous coverage of Russian President Vladimir Putin's visit to New Delhi. We will be bringing you all the developments through the course of the day. Now, another big-ticket defense deal that could be signed during this visit is of the Sukhoi 57. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov confirmed that it is very much on the agenda. The other fifth-gen stealth jet in the market is the F-35, a rival to the Su-57. While the US may want India to buy the F-35, the Russian offer raises the stakes. So how do they fare against each other? Let's give you a side-by-side. The F-35, a fifth-gen single-engine fighter, is produced by Lockheed Martin, while Sukhoi is produced by Russia with United Aircraft Corporation. The Su-57, Russia's twin-engine, fifth-generation fighter, brings 3D thrust vectoring to the table, which the F-35 lacks. American F-35 tops out at Mach 1.6 and carries a ferry range of 1,670 kilometers, while the Su-57 reaches speeds of up to Mach 2. It offers a massive 3,500 kilometer ferry range. The combat radius of the F-35 is shorter when compared to the Sukhoi, which offers a combat range of 1,900 kilometers. Now, each F-35 jet comes at a premium cost of $109 million, while the Sukhoi 57 costs anywhere between $35 to $40 million. That makes the overall operability and maintenance cost, as you would imagine, much lower for the Russian jet. F-35 has been operational since 2015, and the Sukhoi entered service 5 years later, that was in 2020. So far, Lockheed Martin has built about 100 units, while only 32 units were built of the Sukhoi 57 until late 2023. All right. Now, let's just go across to Ambassador Prabhu Dayal, who has been with us, and also Mr. Matthew Vadum. Thank you so much for staying on. Of course, we are covering various elements of this partnership and what it really means for their strategic and privileged relationship that they wish to strengthen further. Now, Mr. Vadum, let me just come back to you. Something that we were discussing earlier. I want to ask you, do you reckon it's fair to place the sort of responsibility perhaps the United States has placed on India when it makes statements like India's purchase of Russian oil is funding the war in Ukraine? This at a time when India has very much consistently pushed on Russia on the path of dialogue and diplomacy. And while the US president has been aiming to end the war between Russia and Ukraine, we see that on ground pretty much nothing has changed. And as Ambassador had pointed out earlier as well, India will maintain strategic autonomy and will of course prioritize its national interests first. So I want to understand what your assessment of this is.
My assessment is the same as it was a few minutes ago, in that the U.S. is trying to pressure India not to buy Russian oil because it's going to use it to fund its war in Ukraine. I guess one can always raise the fungibility of money argument that the money isn't necessarily going. How do you know where the money is going? I suppose that India right now is doing what it considers to be in its own self-interest, and based on that comparison of the two fighter jets, the Lockheed Martin and the Russian, the Sukhoi, it sounds like the Russian fighter jet is the better deal for is a better deal for India, but I don't have any expertise in that, and just the thought of it, of Russian electronics being more reliable than American, strikes me as odd. But I confess that I don't know enough about the two products to be able to compare them. But clearly the U.S. is trying to exert pressure on India to get it to stop buying Russian oil. And the means that it has used to exert this pressure is by ramping up tariffs and by the crackdown on H-1B visas, which has been very unpopular, I understand, in India, and has sparked a lot of nationalist resentment in India towards that policy, and which I guess I can understand. I have never been a fan of tariffs, but in some cases they're useful, like, for example, the American tariffs against China, because China is a serial abuser of American intellectual property, and they steal American intellectual property all the time. So, I think that tariffs should not be done for economic purposes, but sometimes there is a foreign policy justification for it. And I'm not sure why the Trump administration is singling out India for its purchases of Russian oil. They could go after the other places, but maybe the other places they view the other countries in the European Union, for example, as being more powerful, more easy to push around. So they think that India is more likely to bend to pressure, and we'll have to see if that's going to happen. But from the way Indian officials have been talking recently, it doesn't sound that they're going to give in to that pressure.
Right, Mr. Vadum, that's something that we have been trying to fathom as well, and we've been trying to do the math on that one. However, I understand what you're saying. That being said, this visit by the Russian president, this meeting, is also to a certain extent being seen as a global geopolitical realignment of sorts. Would you say that's true?
I wouldn't say that it is a fait accompli. I would say that it is an attempt at a realignment. If other countries don't sign up, if other countries don't join India in drawing closer to Russia, then I wouldn't say it's a realignment. But right now it is an attempt at a realignment, and I can understand why India feels that it's being discriminated against by U.S. trade policy.
All right, Mr. Dayal, let me just quickly come to you on that before we can let me just talk about what I asked Mr. Vadum as well. He says that it does not seem like something that's fait accompli right now, very much an attempt to do so. Do you think we are seeing a real-time geopolitical realignment? If you could quickly sum that up for us.
Well, let me begin by saying that Mr. Matthew has hit the nail on the head by saying that people are wondering why President Trump has singled out India for these oil-related tariffs when other countries are buying. We are equally puzzled by his policies. Now, let me mention that in diplomacy, nothing is fixed and certain. Everything is fluid. The India-Russia partnership has been stable, but of course, it is existing in a world which is very rapidly evolving and changing. India was developing a very close relationship with the United States when suddenly things were upset because of the tariffs and, as Mr. Matthew pointed out, the H-1B visa restrictions, which hurt India. Now, let us focus briefly on the defense sector. The United States is the world's largest exporter of defense items. India is the world's largest importer. So there is a natural affinity for a closer relationship. However, India's focus is on Make in India. India wants transfer of technology. Now, of course, India has imported a lot of items from the United States, but we have found that there is resistance to the idea of transferring technology, which we want. Now, look at the Russians. They are much more willing to transfer technology and help us in pursuing our policy of Make in India. For instance, the BrahMos missile, which did so well in the recent conflict with Pakistan, is a result of a joint venture which India has with Russia. So currently, there are ongoing discussions on the joint production also of the Su-57. Of course, the Russians are interested in selling this aircraft to us. We are keeping our options open. But we also have this factor in our mind that we want to ultimately start manufacturing here in India, have at least joint production of whatever we buy from other countries.
Right.
So the entire situation is evolving. We have a policy of strategic autonomy. We have global sort of foresight and analysis which goes into our policy making. So we will have a continuous evaluation and a re-evaluation of our ties with the United States. But the United States itself has to be more forthcoming in this regard, and it has to understand our compulsions and our needs.
Rightfully said, Ambassador Dayal, that in international relations and diplomacy, everything pretty much remains fluid. Now, that being said, I want to thank you both for your perspectives on this. Thank you so much for joining us. With that, we're also going to slip into a very short break on CNN News 18. Don't go anywhere. Our continuous coverage of Russian President Vladimir Putin's visit to India continues on the other side. Do stay tuned.